The Rivera family vacation was in full swing when I arrived at the luxury resort in Bali, 45 minutes late on purpose. At 34, I'd learned that punctuality only meant more time being treated like the family ATM. This trip was supposedly about reconnecting, but I knew it would revolve around my older brother Marco and sister-in-law Vanessa, the golden couple with their perfect careers and Instagram-worthy lifestyle. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stepped out of my rideshare in a casual linen dress and sandals, deliberately understated compared to the designer outfits I knew would be waiting. The sprawling oceanfront property of the Amara Resort Villas stretched before me, waves crashing against pristine beaches below the cliffside reception area. I took a deep breath and headed toward the family voices carrying from the open-air lobby. "Sophia, finally," my father called out, his tone carrying that familiar note of disappointment. "Everyone's checked in already. We were about to start. The welcome lunch without you." I smiled tightly, giving him a brief hug. "Got caught on a business call," I said, which was technically true. I'd just finished negotiating the final terms on a major acquisition, my 14th this year. "You're still doing that remote work thing?" he asked, already turning back toward the family gathered around a lavish spread on the terrace. "Some online marketing or something, right?" Before I could answer, Marco appeared, designer sunglasses perched on his perfectly coiffed hair, a glass of champagne in hand. At 38, he was the crown jewel of the Rivera family, senior partner at Garrison and Rivera Law, the firm my grandfather had founded. "Soph," he said with that practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. "We were just talking about our new beach house in the Hamptons. Closed last week, 7 bedrooms, private beach access, guest house for staff. 8.5 million, but worth every penny." He eyed my simple outfit and weathered travel bag. "Still with that little online business of yours? Travel blogs or something, right?" "Digital marketing consultancy," I replied evenly, knowing full well he'd dismiss it. "It keeps me busy." Marco chuckled, clapping my shoulder a bit too firmly. "Well, we're always looking for someone to manage our firm's social media. Entry level, but it's a foot in the door to something real." I nodded politely, but inside I nearly laughed. He had no idea. Over the last 6 years, I'd quietly built Horizon Ventures, a private equity firm specializing in luxury hospitality properties. We operated through a network of shell companies and investment vehicles, acquiring underperforming premium resorts, revitalizing them, and either selling for massive profits or maintaining ownership stakes for passive income. "I'm good where I am," I said simply. Marco exchanged a knowing look with my father. "Well, if you ever want a real career with a future, you know where to find us." As I followed them to the terrace, my phone buzzed discreetly. A message from Elise, my chief operations officer, lit up the screen. "Final paperwork complete. The Amara acquisition is officially closed. Congratulations, Ms. Rivera. You now own 68% of the property where your family is vacationing." I tucked my phone away and smiled. Let the vacation begin. "Sophia," my mother called from the buffet table, "come fill your plate. Your brother has arranged this beautiful welcome lunch for everyone." I approached the spread, taking in the artfully arranged seafood and tropical fruits. "It looks lovely," I said. "Marco insisted on the premium package," my mother beamed. "Cost a fortune, but he says we deserve it after everyone's hard work this year." What she didn't mention was that, as usual, the cost would eventually make its way to me. It was an unspoken family tradition at this point. Marco would make grand plans, and I'd somehow end up covering my share, which mysteriously included portions of everyone else's expenses too. "Did you hear about Marco's latest case?" My Aunt Lydia chimed in. $30 million settlement. Made partner at 45, youngest in the firm's history. I nodded appreciatively while filling my plate with grilled mahi-mahi and mango salsa. Meanwhile, I calculated the actual numbers behind Marco's success. The case had settled for $18 million, not 30, and the firm's partners had been steadily selling their shares, anticipating the coming downturn in corporate litigation. Information my investment team had flagged months ago. And Vanessa's interior design business is taking off, my mother continued. She just finished decorating that tech billionaire's penthouse in Manhattan. I glanced at my sister-in-law, who was holding court at the main table, gesturing dramatically as she told some story about fabric swatches and incompetent contractors. What my family didn't know was that Vanessa's business was hemorrhaging money, subsisting almost entirely on loans and Marco's income. Sophia, my father said, appearing beside me with a frown. Why aren't you staying in the ocean view suite like everyone else? Your mother said you booked a standard garden room. I don't need the extra space, I said with a shrug. It's just me. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. What I didn't mention was that I owned a private villa on the other side of the resort, purchased 2 years ago when I first started eyeing the Amara as an acquisition target. The standard room was just for appearances. Well, it makes the group booking look strange, he said, and it's only a few $100s more per night. I'll see if I can upgrade, I lied, knowing I'd be spending nights in my villa once everyone was asleep. As lunch continued, my cousin Diego plopped down beside me, his plate piled high with expensive seafood. At 36, he was the family's self-proclaimed entrepreneur, jumping from one failed startup to another, while living primarily on family generosity. Soph, he said through a mouthful of lobster, you're still doing that online thing, right? Social. Media management? Digital marketing strategy, I corrected for what felt like the 100th time. Perfect. I'm launching a new app next month. Revolutionary stuff. It's like Uber, but for dog walkers. I need someone to handle the marketing. Can't pay much up front, but I'll give you equity. Ground floor opportunity. I smiled politely. I'll think about it. Great! He clapped me on the back. Oh, and I forgot my wallet at the airport. Can you spot me for drinks later? I'll get you back. And there it was. The first of what would undoubtedly be dozens of requests for money over the next week. I nodded, knowing later would never come. After lunch, Marco stood, tapping his glass with a spoon. I have an announcement, he said, commanding the attention of our 20-plus family members. I've arranged a special sunset cruise for tonight. Private catamaran, open bar, gourmet dinner, the works. Cheers erupted around the table. And tomorrow, he continued, I've booked the resort's exclusive spa experience for everyone. Treatments, massages, the whole package. More cheers, more congratulatory pats on his back. What no one mentioned was how the bill would eventually be split fairly, which somehow always translated to me covering far more than my share. Last family vacation, I'd ended up paying for nearly 40% of the shared expenses, despite being just one person out of 16. As everyone dispersed to prepare for the cruise, my mother pulled me aside. Sophia, honey, could you please wear something a bit more appropriate tonight? Everyone's dressing up. I glanced down at my perfectly acceptable resort wear. I brought some nicer things, I assured her. Good, she nodded. First impressions matter. You never know who you might meet. There could be successful single men on staff here. I suppressed a smile at the irony. If she only knew that I technically signed the paychecks for every successful man working at the resort. Back in my modest room, the cover I maintained while secretly staying in my villa, I changed into a simple black dress, elegant but not flashy. I didn't need designer labels to feel confident, though I could afford wardrobes that would make Vanessa's collection look like fast fashion. My phone rang. Elise again. The management team is wondering when you'd like to meet, she said. They're nervous about the new ownership structure. I'll slip away tomorrow morning, I replied. Let's say 7 a.m. before my family is awake. And Elise? Make sure they understand complete discretion is required. My family doesn't know about Horizon, and I'd like to keep it that way for now. Understood. Also, the renovation plans are ready for review. Preliminary budget is coming in at $12 million for the complete overhaul. Approved, I said without hesitation. Let's make it happen. After hanging up, I took a moment to breathe. 6 years of building Horizon Ventures in secret, operating in the shadows while my family dismissed my little online job. Now I controlled a portfolio worth over $300 million, including the very resort where they were treating me like the poor relation. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Marco stood there, already dressed for the evening in linen trousers and a crisp button-down, the picture of casual wealth. Hey, just checking if you're joining us for the cruise, he said, peering, past me into my modest room with barely disguised pity. Also, I put your name down for the bar tab tonight since you're not contributing to the activities fund. Activities fund? I raised an eyebrow. Yeah, Vanessa and I set up a shared expense pool for the week. $10,000 per couple, $5,000 for singles. Keeps things simple. He smiled magnanimously. But since I know things are tight for you, we figured you could cover drinks tonight instead. $5,000 for a week when couples were paying $10,000? The math made no sense, but it was typical Rivera family accounting when it came to my share. I'll handle the bar tab, I agreed, knowing it was easier than arguing. Great. He brightened. Oh, and Diego mentioned you're helping with his new app? Smart move, Soph. Could be your big break. I just smiled. If he only knew about the 3 tech startups in my investment portfolio, each valued at over $50 million. On the way to the dock, I overheard Vanessa talking to my cousins. It's sad, really. Sophia had so much potential. She could have joined any top firm after business school. But now she's what? Making social media posts from coffee shops? At her age? I think she does marketing strategies or something, my cousin Eliana replied. But yeah, she's always been different. Different is fine when you're 25, Vanessa said dismissively. But she's in her 30s now. No career, no husband, no assets. Just that tiny apartment and her laptop. If they only knew about my penthouse in Singapore, my villa in Santorini, and my brownstone in Boston. Or the fact that my tiny apartment was actually the entire top floor of a building I owned in Manhattan. The sunset cruise was exactly as promised. Extravagant. A 75-foot catamaran, staffed with a crew of 8, gourmet dinner prepared by a private chef, and premium open bar. As predicted, I was handed the bar tab at the end, nearly $3,000 for the group of 22 family members. Thanks, Soph, Marco said as I signed the bill to my room. Everyone really appreciated the drinks. Later that night, after most of the family had retired to their rooms, I slipped out to my private villa on the other side of the resort. The 3,000-square-foot space with its infinity pool and panoramic ocean views was a welcome respite from the day of subtle digs and financial exploitation. My phone buzzed with a message from the resort's general manager. Ms. Rivera, everything is prepared for tomorrow's meeting. The management team will be ready at 7 a.m. in the private conference room. I replied with a simple, thank you, and settled onto my terrace, looking out at the moonlight dancing across the water. Tomorrow would be interesting, to say the least. Morning came, and I was up before dawn, dressed in a sleek business suit that had remained hidden in my villa closet. I made my way to the resort's administrative wing, where Raj Mehta, the general manager, was waiting with his executive team. Ms. Rivera, he greeted me with deep respect, extending his hand. It's an honor to finally meet you in person. Your reputation precedes you. Thank you, Raj, I said, shaking his hand firmly. I'm looking forward to working with you and your team to take the Amara to the next level. For the next hour, we discussed renovation plans, staffing improvements, and marketing strategies. The team was impressed by my intimate knowledge of the property and clear vision for its future. Your investment comes at a crucial time, Raj explained. The previous owners had been neglecting necessary upgrades for years. That stops now, I assured them. Horizon Ventures believes in investing in both property and people. We'll be allocating substantial resources to staff training and benefits as well. As the meeting concluded, Raj walked me to the door. Will you be joining your family for the group activities today? I understand they have a full schedule planned. Yes, I smiled. And Raj, please maintain complete discretion about my position. My family isn't aware of my professional situation. He looked confused, but nodded. Of course, Ms. Rivera. Complete confidentiality. I changed back into casual resort wear and joined my family for breakfast, arriving deliberately late. Again. There she is, my father announced. We were about to order without you. Sorry, I said, sliding into the last empty seat. Had some work to take care of. Marco snorted. What, posting Instagram tips? Some of us had real work calls this. Morning. He held up his phone. Just closed another $1 million case from the balcony of my suite. I just smiled and reached for the coffee pot. We've planned a full day, my mother announced. Spa treatments this morning, then the cultural village tour, followed by dinner at the resort's premium restaurant. Sounds wonderful, I said, mentally calculating how much of this would end up on my tab. Sophia. Vanessa leaned across the table, her voice dripping with faux concern. We're all chipping in for the spa day, but if it's too much for your budget, you could skip it. No one would mind. Several family members exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one contradicted her. I think I can manage, I said evenly. The spa experience was admittedly fantastic, a testament to the quality of the resort I'd just acquired. As we lounged in the relaxation room afterward, wrapped in plush robes and sipping detox water, Marco approached with a serious expression. So, Soph, he began, lowering his voice. Dad and I were talking, and we're a bit concerned about your future. You're not getting any younger, and this digital nomad phase has gone on for quite a while. I raised an eyebrow. Phase? You know what I mean, he continued. It was cute for a while, this independence thing, but it's time to think about stability. The firm could really use someone with someone to handle our online presence. I appreciate the concern, I said, keeping my tone neutral. But I'm quite happy with my current situation. He sighed dramatically. That's the problem, Soph. You're settling. You have a Rivera mind. You should be building something substantial, not just existing. If he only knew that I was currently existing atop a $300 million investment empire. The day progressed predictably. More comments about my career choices, more concerns about my future, and more subtle maneuvering to make me pay for various expenses. By dinner, I was mentally exhausted from maintaining the charade. We were seated in the resort's signature restaurant, an exclusive venue that required reservations months in advance, unless, of course, you owned the place. The multi-course tasting menu with wine pairings was exquisite, showcasing the best of local and international cuisine. This is spectacular, my Aunt Lydia exclaimed after the third course, though I imagine quite expensive. Only the best. For family, Marco declared grandly. We're splitting the bill by families, of course, which, in Rivera terms, meant couples would pay one share, while I, as a single person, would also pay one share, effectively doubling my per-person cost. As dessert was being served, Raj appeared at our table, accompanied by a woman I recognized as the resort's food and beverage director. Good evening, he said warmly. I trust everything has been to your satisfaction? Absolutely magnificent, my father replied. Compliments to the chef. Wonderful to hear, Raj smiled. We just wanted to personally ensure that everything was perfect for Ms. Rivera and her family. My brother straightened, assuming the attention was for him. That's very kind, but not necessary, though the service has been impeccable. Raj's eyes flicked briefly to me, then back to the table. We're honored to have you with us. The chef has prepared a special dessert course with his compliments. As if on cue, several servers appeared with additional dessert plates, an extravagant display not on the regular menu. That's incredibly thoughtful, my mother said, clearly pleased with the special treatment. Just a small token of our appreciation, Raj replied. Then, with a slight hesitation that only I noticed, he added, It's not every day we host such distinguished guests, especially ones with such vision for the future of hospitality. I caught his eye, giving him a nearly imperceptible shake of my head. He understood immediately. Please enjoy the rest of your evening, he said, bowing slightly before departing. What was that about? Diego asked, already digging into the complimentary dessert. They must have recognized Marco, my father said proudly. Your reputation precedes you, son. Marco straightened his shoulders, basking in the assumed recognition. Well, I did just win that high-profile case. It was in all the papers. I bit back a smile and enjoyed my dessert in silence. Later that night, after everyone had dispersed, I received a text from Raj apologizing for the near slip. I assured him it was fine and reminded him of our meeting the following morning to review the renovation plans. As I was heading back to my villa, I ran into my mother in the lobby. Sophia, where are you going? Your room is in the east wing. I froze momentarily. Just getting some air. Thought I'd walk along the beach. She frowned. At this hour? It's nearly midnight. I'm still on New York time, I improvised. Jet lag. Well, be careful, she said. Oh, before I forget. We're dividing up tomorrow's activities. You're down for the scuba excursion. It's about $400 per person. That's fine, I said, knowing there was no point in arguing. And Marco mentioned you haven't contributed to the group fund yet. I suppressed a sigh. I thought I was covering the bar tab from the cruise instead. That was just for the cruise, she said as if it were obvious. This is for everything else. $5,000 should cover it. $5,000 to subsidize my wealthier family member's vacation. The irony was almost too much. I'll take care of it in the morning, I promised. She patted my arm. I know finances are different for you, but family is family. If she only knew that my different finances included being her daughter who could buy and sell this entire resort 10 times over without blinking. The next morning, I met again with the management team, this time reviewing detailed renovation plans and approving an increased budget of $15 million for enhancements to the property. The plans included a completely redesigned main pool, upgraded villas, and a new signature restaurant concept. These changes will position the Amara as the premier luxury destination in the region, Raj explained enthusiastically. That's exactly what we want, I agreed. Implementation timeline? We can begin immediately after high season, complete within 8 months. Perfect, I said, signing off on the plans. I'll want weekly progress reports once construction begins. As our meeting concluded, Raj hesitated. Ms. Rivera, forgive me for asking, but your family truly doesn't know about your position? I smiled slightly. They believe I run a small digital marketing consultancy. It's simpler that way. He looked puzzled but nodded respectfully. Of course, your privacy will be maintained. When I rejoined my family for breakfast, they were already deep in conversation about the day's activities. We've booked a private yacht for the day, Marco announced. Snorkeling, lunch on a private island, the works. Sounds lovely, I said, helping myself to fresh fruit and yogurt. It's about $800 per person, Vanessa added, watching me closely. But so worth it. Another expense I'd be expected to cover without complaint. At this point, I was keeping a mental tally just for amusement. My father cleared his throat. Sophia, your mother mentioned you haven't contributed to the group fund yet. All eyes turned to me. I could feel the collective judgment. Poor Sophia, always the financial burden. I'll handle it today, I assured him. We can cover you if needed, Marco offered magnanimously. And you can pay us back, whenever. The condescension in his tone was unmistakable. This was the dynamic that had defined our relationship. For years, Marco the successful provider, me the struggling younger sister. That won't be necessary, I said evenly. But thank you for the offer. The yacht excursion was objectively beautiful. Crystal clear waters, vibrant coral reefs, a pristine private beach for lunch. But the undercurrent of financial tension persisted, with every luxurious detail serving as a reminder of what my family assumed I couldn't afford. As we returned to the resort in late afternoon, I noticed unusual activity in the main lobby. Staff in formal attire, fresh flower arrangements being placed, a red carpet rolled out at the entrance. What's happening? My mother asked one of the bellhops. Preparing for the owner's reception tonight, ma'am, he replied. Annual event for the resort's investors and VIP guests. Sounds exclusive, Vanessa remarked. I wonder if we could get invitations. Marco, you should speak to the manager. I bit my lip to hide my amusement. The owner's reception was news. To me, clearly something Raj had arranged as a courtesy given the recent acquisition. I'm sure it's very restricted, I said casually. Well, it doesn't hurt to try, Marco insisted, already scanning the lobby for someone important-looking to approach. I excused myself, slipping away to call Raj. An owner's reception? I questioned when he answered. A small gathering to welcome you properly, he explained. Just key investors and management. I assumed you'd want to attend, given your presence. On property. I sighed. My family is already asking about invitations. I see, he said thoughtfully. Would you like me to include them? Or perhaps arrange a different event for them as a distraction? I considered my options. After days of condescension and financial exploitation, part of me wanted to maintain my cover. But another part, a part growing tired of the charade, was tempted to let the truth emerge. Include them, I decided, but don't single me out in any way. Let events unfold naturally. As you wish, Ms. Rivera, he replied. Formal invitations will be delivered to all rooms shortly. When I returned to the family gathering in the resort's central courtyard, Marco was already boasting about his successful networking. The manager is sending invitations to our rooms, he announced proudly. Apparently, they're making an exception for us. Exception? I asked innocently. It's normally just for major investors and owners, he explained with undisguised smugness. But when I mentioned my recent case, he recognized the name immediately. Rivera carries weight, after all. I nodded seriously, fighting to keep my expression neutral. Indeed it does. As evening approached, the anticipation for the owner's reception built among my family members. The formal invitations had been delivered to our rooms, heavy cardstock, with gold embossing requesting the honor of your presence at the Amara Resort's exclusive Investor Appreciation Gala. This is quite the coup, my father said, adjusting his bow tie in the lobby mirror as we gathered before the event. These types of events are typically closed to regular guests. Regular guests don't have a Rivera in their party, Marco replied with a self-satisfied smile. He was dressed in a designer tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Vanessa stood beside him in a red gown, dripping with jewelry that I knew for a fact was mostly rented for special occasions. I had changed into a simple, black evening dress, elegantly cut but deliberately understated. The only luxury I allowed myself was a pair of vintage diamond earrings that had belonged to my grandmother. "Sophia, couldn't you have worn something more impressive?" my mother whispered, eyeing my ensemble with disappointment. "This is a significant networking opportunity." "I'm comfortable as I am," I replied calmly. She sighed. "At least put on some lipstick. You never know who might be there. Potential. Clients, connections, eligible bachelors." I suppressed a smile at her predictable priorities. Finding me a wealthy husband had been her mission for the last decade. As we made our way toward the resort's grand ballroom, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. For years, I'd hidden my success from my family, enduring their condescension and financial exploitation. Tonight, the truth might finally emerge, not through any declaration of mine, but simply through the natural unfolding of events. The ballroom had been transformed into a vision of tropical elegance, cascading orchids, subtle lighting that mimicked the sunset, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the moonlit ocean. A string quartet played softly in one corner, while uniformed staff circulated with champagne and canapes. "This is exquisite," Aunt Lydia breathed, taking in the scene. "I wonder which celebrities might be here." "Focus on the investors," my father advised. "Those are the connections that matter." As we entered, Raj approached, looking impeccable in a tailored suit. "Welcome to the Investor Appreciation Gala," he said warmly. "We're delighted you could join us." Marco stepped forward, hand extended. "Marco Rivera," he announced, as if bestowing a great honor. "We appreciate the invitation. I understand these events are typically quite exclusive." Raj smiled politely. "Indeed, Mr. Rivera. We reserve this evening for our most valued partners and guests." His eyes flickered briefly to me before returning to Marco. "Please, enjoy yourselves. The presentation will begin in about an hour." "Presentation?" my father inquired. "A brief overview of the resort's performance and future plans," Raj explained, "particularly exciting this year, with our recent change in ownership." This was news to me. Clearly another of Raj's additions to the evening. I made a mental note to review whatever presentation had been prepared. "Fascinating," Marco said, already scanning the room for important-looking people to approach. "I'd be interested in hearing about investment opportunities myself." Raj's expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. "By all means, enjoy the evening. If you'll excuse me, I must greet other guests." As he departed, Marco turned to the family with triumph. "Did you hear that? Investment opportunities. I knew getting us into this event would be worthwhile." "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," my father cautioned, though his eyes gleamed with the same ambition. "First, we mingle, make connections." The family dispersed throughout the ballroom, gravitating toward the wealthiest-looking attendees, like moths to flame. I hung back, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server and finding a quiet spot to observe. Within minutes, Diego appeared at my side. "Hey, Soph, quick question. Do you have your credit card? There's a charity donation thing at the entrance, and it would look good if I contributed, you know." "How much?" I asked, already knowing where this was heading. "Just 1,000, he said casually, as if asking for spare change. "Great cause. Something about local marine conservation." I raised an eyebrow. $1,000? "It's for the environment," he insisted. "Plus, there's a list of donors they're displaying. Good exposure for my new app." The app that existed only in his imagination and countless pitches to family members. "Fine," I sighed, pulling out my card. "But this is the last time this trip, Diego." "Absolutely," he promised, a promise I'd heard at least 20 times before. "You're the best, Soph." As he hurried away with my credit card, Vanessa approached, champagne glass in hand. "Sophia," she said with faux warmth. "This is quite the gathering, isn't it? Shame you're not properly dressed for it." "I'm comfortable," I repeated. She sipped her champagne, eyes scanning my simple dress. Comfort is what people prioritize when they've given up on advancement. Speaking of which, have you given any thought to Marco's offer? The firm really could use someone to manage our online presence. "I'm content with my current work," I said evenly. She laughed lightly. "Content. Such a sad word. In the Rivera family, we strive for exceptional, not content." She leaned closer, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Between us, Marco and I are concerned about how you're presenting yourself here. This is a room full of successful people, potential connections, and you're—" She gestured vaguely at my entirety. "Like this." Before I could respond, my mother joined us, excitement evident in her expression. "Sophia, you'll never guess who's here. James Whitaker. The tech investor. His family is worth billions, and he's single." Vanessa perked up immediately. "Where?" My mother nodded toward a tall man in conversation with several resort executives. "By the window. Apparently he's invested in resorts across Asia." "You should introduce yourself," my mother urged me. "He's exactly the kind of connection you need." What neither of them knew was that James Whitaker was not only a business acquaintance, but had also unsuccessfully tried to outbid Horizon Ventures for the Amara acquisition. We'd had dinner in Singapore just last month to discuss potential collaborations on future projects. "I'm sure he's busy," I demurred. "This is exactly your problem," Vanessa hissed. "Opportunities literally standing 5 feet away, and you hide in the corner. No wonder you're still managing social media accounts while the rest of us build real careers." I took a slow sip of champagne, allowing her words to wash over me like waves on the shore, noisy but ultimately powerless. "I'll mingle in my own time," I said calmly. Vanessa rolled her eyes and steered my mother away, likely to plot some other networking strategy on my behalf. Across the room, I spotted Marco deep in conversation with a group of older men, clearly attempting to impress them with animated gestures and what I assumed were embellished stories of his legal triumphs. My father stood nearby, occasionally nodding and adding comments, the perfect supportive patriarch. A server approached with a fresh glass of champagne. "Miss Rivera?" she said quietly. "Mr. Maida asked if you could spare a moment to review the presentation before it begins." I nodded and followed her through a discreet side door into a small preparation room where Raj waited with a tablet. "My apologies for the surprise," he said, "but the board insisted on including highlights from the acquisition and future plans. I've prepared a brief overview, but wanted your approval before proceeding." I reviewed the slides quickly, a tasteful presentation of the Amara's history, recent performance metrics, and vision for the future under new ownership. The final slide featured the Horizon Ventures logo and a professional headshot of me that had been taken for a financial publication last year. "This will certainly make for an interesting evening," I remarked. "Should I modify anything?" Raj asked, clearly sensing my hesitation. I considered asking him to remove my photo and any direct reference to me, to maintain the charade a little longer, but a sense of calm resignation had settled over me. Perhaps it was time for the truth. "It's perfect as is," I decided. "Let's proceed as planned." When I returned to the ballroom, I found James Whitaker approaching me with a knowing smile. "Sophia Rivera," he said warmly, kissing my cheek. "I was wondering when you'd make your presence known." "James," I greeted him. "Enjoying the evening?" "Tremendously, though I'm still bitter you outmaneuvered me on this property." His eyes twinkled with good-natured rivalry. "The Amara was supposed to be the crown jewel of my Southeast Asian collection." "You snooze, you lose, Whitaker," I teased. "Better luck next time." He laughed. Always 3 steps ahead, aren't you? By the way, I've been cornered by a man claiming to be Sophia Rivera's brother, kept talking about his law firm and suggesting I might need his services for my business. Disputes. Didn't have the heart to tell him I already have the best legal team money can buy. I glanced across the room to where Marco was now watching us with naked curiosity. Family is complicated, I said simply. So I gather, James replied. He seemed rather surprised when I mentioned knowing you from the Singapore investment conference last year. I winced slightly. It's a long story. One I'd love to hear sometime, he said, raising his glass in a small toast. For now, I'll leave you to your evening. Call me when you're ready to discuss that joint venture in Maldives. As James walked away, Marco materialized at my side, his expression a mixture of confusion and suspicion. You know James Whitaker? He demanded without preamble. We've met, I said noncommittally. He said you were at some investment conference together, in Singapore. I shrugged. Digital marketing involves networking too, Marco. His eyes narrowed. What exactly do you do again? Because Whitaker seemed to think you were involved with resort investments or something. Before I could formulate a response that would neither confirm nor deny, a chime sounded, signaling the start of the presentation. Saved by the bell. Or rather, the chime. Guests began gravitating toward the front of the ballroom where a small stage had been set up. A projector screen descended from the ceiling as the lights dimmed slightly. Raj stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. Good evening, distinguished guests and valued partners. Welcome to the Amara Resort's annual Investor Appreciation Gala. My family clustered together near the front, eager to absorb whatever valuable information might be shared. I positioned myself toward the back, maintaining a clear view but ready for a quick exit if necessary. As many of you know, Raj continued, the Amara has recently undergone an exciting transition. After 15 years under the Grayson Hotel Group, we're proud to announce our acquisition by Horizon Ventures, a boutique private equity firm specializing in luxury hospitality properties. The first slide appeared, a sleek graphic showing the Horizon Ventures logo alongside the Amara's emblem. Under this new leadership, Raj explained, the Amara will be undergoing a comprehensive $15 million renovation and expansion, elevating our already exceptional property to unprecedented heights of luxury and service. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. My father leaned toward Marco, whispering something that made them both nod appreciatively. Raj continued through several slides detailing the resort's performance and future plans. I could see my family becoming increasingly engaged, no doubt imagining how they might somehow leverage this information for their own benefit. And now, Raj said, it is my great pleasure to introduce the visionary behind Horizon Ventures, the architect of our exciting new chapter. This was it, the moment of truth. My heart beat slightly faster, but I felt strangely calm. After years of hiding in plain sight, there was something almost liberating about the impending revelation. The slide changed to my professional headshot alongside a brief bio highlighting my founding of Horizon Ventures, our $300 million portfolio, and our track record of successful acquisitions. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Sophia Rivera, founder and CEO of Horizon Ventures, and the new majority owner of the Amara Resort Villas. A spotlight swept across the room, finding me in the back. Polite applause filled the ballroom as heads turned in my direction. The expressions on my family members' faces as they twisted around to locate me were a study in confusion, disbelief, and dawning shock. For a moment, I considered slipping out the nearest exit, avoiding the confrontation that would inevitably follow. But something had shifted inside me. I was tired of diminishing myself to protect their egos, tired of bankrolling their excesses, while being treated as the family charity case. With deliberate calm, I made my way to the stage, accepting Raj's outstretched hand as I climbed the steps. The applause continued, peppered now with whispers, as guests noted the disconnect between my understated appearance and the impressive credentials displayed on screen. "Thank you, Raj," I said, taking the microphone. "And thank you all for joining us this evening." My family remained frozen in the front row, a tableau of stunned faces. Marco's mouth literally hung open, while my father's complexion had turned an alarming shade of red. Vanessa clutched her champagne glass so tightly, feared it might shatter. "The Amara has always held a special place in my heart," I continued smoothly. "Its potential is extraordinary, and I'm excited to guide it into a new era of excellence." I kept my remarks brief and professional, focusing on the business aspects rather than any personal narrative. As I spoke, I maintained eye contact with various guests around the room, deliberately avoiding my family's stares. "I look forward to speaking with many of you individually throughout the evening," I concluded. "Please enjoy the celebration. Thank you." More applause as I handed the microphone back to Raj and descended the steps. The crowd immediately began to shift, creating a clear path between me and my family. The confrontation was inevitable now. Marco reached me first, his face a storm of emotions. "What the hell was that?" he hissed, grabbing my elbow and pulling me toward a quieter corner. "Careful, Marco," I said evenly, extracting my arm from his grip. "That's no way to address your host." My parents approached next, followed by Vanessa, Diego, and various other relatives forming a tight circle around me. "Sophia," my father said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing." "This is no game," I interrupted calmly. "Horizon Ventures acquired the Amara 3 days ago. The transaction has been in progress for months." "That's impossible," Marco sputtered. "You run a tiny marketing company. You can barely afford your share of this vacation." I allowed myself a small smile. "Is that what you've believed all this time? How fascinating." "Stop being cryptic," Vanessa snapped. "Explain yourself. Now." I took a deliberate sip of champagne, enjoying the moment perhaps more than I should have. "What's to explain? I founded Horizon Ventures 6 years ago. We specialize in acquiring and revitalizing luxury properties. The Amara is our 14th acquisition." My mother's hand fluttered to her throat. "But you never said anything." "You never asked," I replied simply. "You were all too busy telling me what I should be doing to actually inquire about what I was actually doing." Diego pushed forward. "Wait, so you're actually rich? Like, really rich?" "That's a rather crass way to put it," I said. "But Horizon manages approximately $300 million in assets, yes." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only when my father cleared his throat. "Why the secrecy?" he demanded. "Why let us believe you were struggling all this time?" I considered the question carefully. Initially, it wasn't intentional. I was building something and didn't feel the need to broadcast it. But over time, as the condescension and financial exploitation continued, I admit I became curious about how far it would go. "Exploitation?" Marco echoed indignantly. "What are you talking about?" "The $5,000 singles contribution to the vacation fund," I began, counting off on my fingers. "The bar tab from the cruise. The daily activities you've all been so generously including me in, with the expectation that I'd cover my share, which somehow always amounts to more than my proportional cost. Diego's constant borrowing. The entry-level job offers. Should I continue?" Uncomfortable glances were exchanged among the family members. My mother looked genuinely distressed, while my father's expression had shifted from anger to something more calculated, likely already considering how to benefit from this revelation. "We were trying to help you," Vanessa insisted. though her voice lacked conviction. "Were you?" I asked softly. "Or were you enjoying the power dynamic? The moral superiority of the successful family members assisting their struggling relative?" No one had an immediate answer to that. "So this whole time," Marco said slowly, "while we've been worrying about you, offering you opportunities, covering for you." "Covering for me?" I interrupted with a short laugh. "Is that what you call it? You've been what? Secretly judging us? Laughing at us behind our backs?" He continued, ignoring my question. "Not judging," I corrected. "Observing, and occasionally subsidizing your excessive lifestyles while being treated as the family charity case. It's been educational." My father stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This is hardly the venue for a family discussion. We should continue this privately." "Actually," I said, glancing around at the curious onlookers who were trying to appear like they weren't eavesdropping, "I have guests to attend to. We can discuss this further tomorrow if you wish." I moved to step away, but Marco blocked my path. "You don't get to drop this bomb and just walk away, Sophia. What kind of game have you been playing with us?" "No game, Marco," I said, meeting his gaze steadily. "Just business. Speaking of which, how is the firm doing?" "I understand. Several partners have been quietly offloading their shares." His face paled. "How do you—" "Information is a valuable commodity in my line of work," I said, "as is due diligence. For instance, I'm aware that Vanessa's design business has been operating at a loss for 3 consecutive quarters, and that your Hamptons' property is leveraged well beyond what you can comfortably afford." Vanessa made a small choking sound, while Marco's expression hardened into something dangerous. "You've been spying on us?" he demanded. "Research," I corrected. "The same way I research any investment opportunity or business connection." "We're your family," my mother protested weakly. "Not business connections." I turned to her with a softer expression. "Are we, though? When was the last time any of you asked about my life? My actual life, not the version you assumed I was. Living? When was the last time our interactions weren't colored by your pity or condescension?" She had no answer, her eyes filling with tears that I suspected were more about embarrassment than genuine remorse. My father, ever the pragmatist, was already shifting gears. "Well," he said, forcing joviality into his tone, "this is certainly unexpected but wonderful news. My daughter, the successful entrepreneur, we must celebrate properly." "How convenient," I remarked, "that your pride appears precisely when you discover I have something to offer beyond familial obligation." His smile faltered slightly. "That's unfair, Sophia. We've always been proud of you." "Have you?" I challenged, because I recall being described as still figuring things out and wasting my potential as recently as yesterday. Before he could formulate a response, Raj appeared at my elbow. "Ms. Rivera," he said smoothly, "the Matsumoto Group is eager to discuss the Kyoto property with you, when you have a moment." "Thank you, Raj," I replied. "I'll be right over." As he departed, Marco's eyes narrowed. "The Matsumoto Group? What Kyoto property?" "Our next acquisition," I said simply. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual business to attend to." "This isn't over, Sophia," my father warned quietly. "No," I agreed. "I suspect it's just beginning." As I walked away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and apprehension. The secret I'd maintained for years had finally been revealed, and there was no going back. Whether this would destroy my family relationships or transform them remained to be seen. For now, though, I had a room full of actual investors to attend to, and a $15 million renovation to finalize. The family drama would have to wait. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of strategic conversations, industry connections, and the subtle dance of luxury hospitality investment. Throughout it all, I was acutely aware of my family's eyes following me around the room, watching, as I moved confidently among people they had only aspired to meet. James Whittaker found me again near the dessert table, an amused expression on his face. "Your family seems rather shaken," he observed. "I take it they didn't know about your little empire?" "They believed I was managing social media accounts from coffee shops," I admitted. He laughed. "That's priceless. The quiet ones always surprise you. By the way, I'm serious about that Maldives project. Your vision for the Amara has me convinced we'd work well together." "Send me the prospectus," I agreed. "I'll have my team review it next week." As the gala began to wind down, Diego approached, noticeably tipsy from the open bar. "So, sis," he slurred slightly, "about my app idea. Some things, it seemed, would never change." "We'll talk tomorrow, Diego," I said firmly. "When you're sober." He grinned lopsidedly. "You're gonna invest, right? Family helping family and all that?" The irony was almost too perfect. "We'll see." As guests began to depart, I found myself standing alone on the terrace, watching the moonlight dance across the waves. The night had not gone as I'd expected, but perhaps it had gone exactly as it needed to. "Quite an evening," Raj said, joining me with 2 glasses of champagne. "Your family seems surprised." "That's one word for it," I agreed, accepting the offered glass. "If I may be so bold," he ventured, "why keep such success a secret from them?" I considered the question thoughtfully. It wasn't intentional, at first. I was building something I believed in, focused on the work rather than the recognition. By the time Horizon became significant, the pattern was established. They saw me as the struggling relative, and I suppose I was curious how far their perception diverged from reality. "And now?" he asked. I sipped my champagne, gazing out at the horizon where the dark sea met the star-filled sky. Now we see what happens when perceptions shatter and reality takes their place. Morning arrived with the brilliant tropical sunrise streaming through the windows of my private villa. I had slept better than expected. The weight of secrecy finally lifted from my shoulders. Whatever confrontations awaited me today, at least they would be honest ones. I took my time preparing for the day, choosing a simple but elegant sundress and pulling my hair into a neat bun. No more pretending to be less than I was. Today, I would meet my family as my authentic self, Sophia Rivera, founder and CEO of Horizon Ventures. My phone had been buzzing since dawn, messages from family members ranging from Diego's enthusiastic pitches for investment to my mother's emotional pleas for a private conversation. I responded to none of them, preferring to address the situation face-to-face, rather than through fragmented text exchanges. As I walked through the resort grounds toward the main restaurant for breakfast, I noticed the subtle shift in how staff greeted me, no longer with the polite deference shown to all guests, but with the deeper respect reserved for ownership. Word had clearly spread throughout the entire staff. "Good morning, Ms. Rivera," the hostess greeted me warmly. "Your usual table on the terrace is prepared. Would you like coffee brought out immediately?" "Yes, please," I replied, appreciating that she'd noted my preference from previous mornings. "And is my family here yet?" "Not yet, ma'am. Though Mr. Mehta mentioned they've requested a private dining room for breakfast. He wanted to confirm if that meets with your approval." Interesting. They were already attempting to control the narrative to keep our family drama contained. "That's fine," I agreed. "But I'll take my coffee on the main terrace first. Let me know when they arrive." I settled at a quiet corner table overlooking the ocean, savoring the rich local coffee, and mentally preparing for the confrontation to come. The terrace was peaceful at this hour, just a few early risers enjoying the morning tranquility. James Whittaker appeared, spotting me immediately and heading toward my table. "Mind if I join you? I promise to depart before the family fireworks. Begin." I smiled, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "By all means." He settled in, accepting a cup of coffee from a hovering server. "I've been thinking about your situation," he said without preamble. "It's fascinating from a psychological perspective." "How so?" I asked, curious about his take. "You've achieved what most people only dream of, building something significant entirely on your own terms, without family connections or nepotism. That's rare, especially in our circles." He stirred his coffee thoughtfully. "Yet instead of broadcasting your success, you chose to observe how your family treated you when they thought you had nothing to offer them." "It wasn't entirely deliberate," I admitted. "It evolved organically." "Even more interesting," he mused. "A natural experiment in human behavior. What have you learned from it?" I considered the question carefully. That people's treatment of you reveals far more about them than it does about you. That success defined by others' metrics is hollow, and that true confidence doesn't require external validation. He nodded appreciatively. "Valuable lessons, though I suspect today will test that last one considerably." Ms. Rivera, a server, approached discreetly. "Your family has arrived and been seated in the private dining room." I thanked her and turned back to James. "Duty calls." He raised his coffee cup in a small salute. "Good luck. And remember, you hold all the cards. Now, use that power wisely." The private dining room was located in a secluded wing of the restaurant, with panoramic views and a separate entrance for discretion. When I entered, the entire family was already seated around a large rectangular table, conversations halting abruptly at my appearance. "Sophia," my father rose, assuming the role of family patriarch. "We've been waiting." "I appreciate your patience," I replied calmly, taking the empty seat at the head of the table, a position that would typically have been his or Marco's. An awkward silence fell as servers entered with trays of breakfast offerings, carefully arranging them on the sideboard before discreetly withdrawing. Once we were alone, my father cleared his throat. "I think we all agree that last night's revelation came as quite a shock." Murmurs of agreement circled the table. My mother dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, while Marco sat with arms crossed, his expression stormy. "That was never my intention," I said evenly, though I admit the timing became deliberate. "Why the secrecy?" my father demanded. "Why lead us to believe you were struggling all these years? Do you know how many nights your mother worried about you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Did she? Because our conversations have centered primarily around my lack of a husband and traditional career path, not genuine concern for my well-being." My mother flinched. "That's not fair, Sophia." "Isn't it?" I countered gently. "When was the last time any of you asked me about my work? My actual work, not the version you assumed I was doing? When was the last time you expressed interest in my life beyond how it compared to your expectations?" Uncomfortable glances were exchanged around the table. "That's beside the point," Marco interjected impatiently. "The point is you deliberately misled us." "Did I?" I challenged. "I told you I ran a digital marketing consultancy. That was true. It's one division of Horizon Ventures focused on optimizing the online presence of our properties. I never claimed it was the entirety of my professional life." "Don't play semantic games," he snapped. "You let us believe you were barely getting by. You accepted financial help you clearly didn't need." "Financial help?" I repeated incredulously. "You mean being pressured to contribute disproportionately to family expenses? Being made to cover bar tabs and activities while being treated as a charity case? That kind of help?" Diego shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "About that $1,000 yesterday." I waved him off. "The money isn't the point, Diego. It never was." "Then what is the point?" my father demanded. "Why maintain this charade?" I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. It wasn't a calculated deception. When I left BlackRock to start my own venture, none of you took it seriously. You all assumed I was having some sort of quarter-life crisis, that I'd eventually come to my senses and return to a traditional career path. I poured myself a cup of coffee, the familiar ritual helping to center my thoughts. As Horizon grew, your perceptions of me were already fixed. You saw what you expected to see, the struggling younger sister, the family disappointment. And after a while, I became curious. How would you treat someone you believed had nothing to offer you? What was your baseline level of respect for a family member you perceived as unsuccessful by your standards? Vanessa's face flushed with anger. So we were what? Subjects in some twisted social experiment? No, I said firmly. You were family who consistently showed me who you really were, and I was paying attention. My mother's eyes filled with tears. You make us sound so horrible. Not horrible, I corrected. Human. We all have blind spots, especially with family. But those blind spots can reveal important truths if we're willing to see them. My father leaned forward, steepling his fingers, his negotiation posture. Regardless of how we got here, we need to discuss what happens next. Clearly, there are business opportunities we should explore as a family. I nearly laughed at the predictability. Are there? Of course, he continued smoothly. The Rivera name has weight in legal and corporate circles. Marco's connections could open doors for your investment firm, and naturally, we'd be interested in participating in future ventures. Naturally, I echoed, unable to keep the irony from my voice. It makes perfect sense, Marco added eagerly, his earlier anger apparently forgotten in the face of potential profit. We could create a family office structure. Rivera Investments has a nice ring to it. I sipped my coffee, studying him over the rim of the cup. Interesting how quickly your perspective shifts when you see potential benefit. His expression hardened. That's unfair. Is it? I set down my cup carefully. Yesterday, I was someone to be pitied and patronized. Today, I'm a potential business partner. What changed, Marco? Just your awareness of my financial position? You're being deliberately difficult, he accused. This is a logical next step. For whom? I challenged. Horizon Ventures has operated successfully for 6 years without the Rivera name or connections. We have our own network, our own reputation, our own trajectory. What exactly would you bring to the table that we don't already have? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable in its directness. Diego raised his hand tentatively, like a student in class. I still think my app idea has potential. Not now, Diego, several family members chorused. My father cleared his throat again. Sophia, I understand you're feeling resentful. Perhaps we haven't always given your choices the respect they deserved. But we're family. Surely that counts for something. It does, I agreed softly. It's why I'm sitting here having this conversation instead of checking out and moving to my villa for the remainder of the vacation. Your villa? My mother questioned. I own a private residence on the property, I explained. I've been staying there at night, using the standard room as a cover. More surprised glances around the table. The question isn't whether family counts for something, I continued. It's what that something should be. Is it automatic access to business opportunities? Or is it genuine support, respect, and connection regardless of perceived success or failure? My words landed heavily in the room. For perhaps the first time, I saw genuine reflection in some of their expressions. Aunt Lydia, who had remained quiet until now, leaned forward. I think what Sophia is trying to say is that relationships shouldn't be transactional. We've been measuring her worth by our standards rather than seeing her for who she actually is. I gave her a grateful look. Exactly. That's all very philosophical, Marco said dismissively, but we're talking about practical matters here. Family businesses are common for a reason. They make sense. Perhaps in some cases, I acknowledged, but Horizon was built deliberately outside the family sphere. Its culture, values, and direction are distinct. Merging it with the Rivera name now would be inauthentic. So you're shutting us out completely? My father asked, a note of genuine hurt in his voice. I softened my tone. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that our relationship needs to be rebuilt on a foundation of mutual respect before any business entanglements could be considered. And frankly, that might never be the right move for Horizon. Then what are you proposing? He pressed. I took a moment to gather my thoughts, looking around at the faces of my family members, some angry, some hurt, some calculating, some genuinely confused. I'm proposing we use the rest of this vacation to get to know each other as we actually are, not as we've perceived each other to be. I'd like to hear about your lives. Your real lives, including the struggles and uncertainties, not just the polished highlights. And I'm willing to share more about my journey, the challenges I've faced building Horizon. I spread my hands in a gesture of openness. No more keeping score on who pays for what. No more jockeying for status or approval. Just authentic connection, if that's something you're interested in. Silence fell as they absorbed my words. Finally, my mother spoke. I'd like that, she said softly. I realize I've been so focused on what I thought your life should look, like that I never truly saw what you were actually building. It was the first genuine acknowledgement I'd heard, and something tight in my chest loosened slightly. Diego raised his hand again. Does this mean you're not going to invest in my app? Despite everything, laughter rippled around the table, breaking some of the tension. Tell you what, Diego, I offered. If you can put together a proper business plan, not just an idea, but market research, competitive analysis, financial projections, I'll have my team review it. Same process we use for any potential investment. His eyes widened. For real? No family shortcuts? No shortcuts, I confirmed, but genuine consideration. He nodded slowly, seeming to understand the value of what I was offering, a chance to be taken seriously on merit rather than family obligation. What about the rest of the vacation? Vanessa asked pragmatically. The activities, the expenses. They're covered, I said simply. Consider it my gift to the family, not because you need the financial assistance, but because I want us to focus on rebuilding connections rather than splitting bills. Marco still looked skeptical. And after the vacation, we just go back to our separate lives, pretending this never happened? Not pretending, I corrected. Evolving. I'm not saying we'll resolve years of family dynamics in a week, but we can start a new chapter, one based on who we actually are, rather than who we've pretended to be. My father, ever the strategist, seemed to be calculating angles in his head. And Horizon Ventures, its connection to the family name? Remains as it has been, I said firmly. Horizon is my creation, separate from the Rivera legacy. That doesn't mean we can't support each other in other ways, but my company's independence is non-negotiable. He nodded slowly, seemingly accepting the boundary I'd drawn. Now, I said, rising from my seat, I have a meeting with the renovation team at 9. I suggest we all take some time to reflect and perhaps meet for lunch with a fresh perspective. As I moved to leave, my mother caught my hand. Sophia, wait. I'm proud of you. Not because of what you've built or how much it's worth, but because you did it on your own terms. I should have said that long ago. The simple words, spoken with genuine emotion, touched something deep within me. Thank you, Mom. That means More than you know. I squeezed her hand gently before departing, leaving my family to process the seismic shift in our dynamics. The meeting with the renovation team was a welcome return to professional normalcy after the emotional intensity of the family breakfast. For 2 hours, I immersed myself in architectural renderings, material samples, and timeline projections. The concrete realities of transforming the Amara into an even more exceptional property. As we concluded, Raj remained behind after the others had left. "How did it go with your family?" he asked cautiously. "About as expected," I replied. "Shock, anger, opportunism, and perhaps the beginnings of understanding. It's a process." He nodded thoughtfully. "Families are complicated." "Indeed they are." I gathered my notes. "I've told them the rest of their stay is covered as my gift. Please ensure they have access to whatever activities or amenities they request, but maintain the same level of service as for any guest. No special treatment. That's important." "Understood," he agreed. "And your private villa? Should we continue the discretion there?" I considered this. "No. That charade has served its purpose. I'll be staying there openly now." "Very good, Ms. Rivera." He hesitated. "If I may say so, your approach to this situation is admirable. Many in your position would either have flaunted their success from the beginning or continued hiding it indefinitely. Neither approach would have taught me what I needed to learn," I said simply. As I left the administration building, I spotted Marco sitting alone at the beachfront bar, staring into a half-empty cocktail despite the early hour. After a moment's hesitation, I changed direction and joined him. "Isn't it a bit early for that?" I asked, nodding toward his drink. He glanced up, surprise flickering across his face. "Exceptional circumstances call for exceptional measures." I signaled the bartender for a sparkling water and settled onto the stool beside him. For a while, we sat in silence, watching the waves crash against the pristine shore. "You know what bothers me the most?" he finally said, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Not that you're successful, though that was certainly a shock. It's that you didn't trust me enough to share it." "It wasn't about trust, Marco," I replied carefully. "At least, not entirely. It was about needing to build something that was wholly mine, not an extension of the Rivera legacy." "But why?" he pressed. "I've always looked out for you, tried to help you." I turned to face him directly. "Have you? Or have you tried to mold me into a version of myself that made sense within your worldview? The dutiful younger sister, following the path you laid out, grateful for your guidance?" He frowned, genuinely perplexed. "What's wrong with that? I've been successful. I wanted the same for you. But success on your terms isn't necessarily success on mine," I explained gently. I needed to define that for myself, outside the shadow of the Rivera name and expectations. He swirled the ice in his glass, absorbing my words. "And you couldn't do that while being honest with your family?" "I tried at first," I reminded him. "When I left BlackRock to start my own venture, do you remember what you said to me?" He winced slightly. "Probably something condescending. You said it was cute that I wanted to play entrepreneur for a while, and that you'd have a position waiting for me when I was ready to get serious again." "I was trying to provide a safety net," he defended. "I know," I acknowledged. "But in doing so, you dismissed my vision before it had even taken shape. After that, it became easier to simply show rather than tell. To build Horizon quietly and let the results speak for themselves." He finished his drink, setting the glass down with a soft clink. "And now, where do we go from here?" It was the first genuine question he'd asked me in years, not loaded with assumptions or hidden agendas, but a simple request for my perspective. "Now we start over," I suggested. Not as the successful older brother and the struggling younger sister, but as two adults with different paths, different strengths, different definitions of what matters. Equals. Equals, he repeated, testing the word. That might take some getting used to. For both of us, I agreed. He signaled for another drink, then seemed to reconsider. Actually, make that a sparkling water, he told the bartender. Turning back to me, he added, maybe clarity is what we both need right now. It was a small gesture, but somehow significant. A willingness to step out of established patterns, to approach our relationship with fresh eyes. So, he said after a moment, tell me about Horizon, the real story, not the sanitized version. How did you build a $300 million company without any of us noticing? For the first time in years, I saw genuine curiosity in his eyes rather than judgment or calculation. And so I began to share the journey. The sleepless nights, the early failures, the pivotal decisions, the moments of doubt and triumph that had shaped Horizon Ventures into what it had become. As we talked, other family members gradually joined. Us, my mother and father, Vanessa, Diego, Aunt Lydia. Drawn by the unfamiliar sight of Marco and me engaged in what appeared to be an actual conversation rather than our usual performative interactions. The morning stretched into afternoon, our circle widening, the conversations becoming increasingly authentic. My father shared concerns about the law firm's future that he'd previously kept hidden behind a facade of unwavering confidence. Vanessa admitted her design business was struggling, more vanity project than viable enterprise. Diego spoke candidly about his fear of failure, the real reason behind his endless stream of undeveloped ideas. And I spoke openly about my own journey, not just the successes, but the moments of crippling self-doubt, the failed acquisitions, the lessons learned through painful experience. The mask of perfect competence I'd constructed was as limiting in its way as the mask of struggling independence I'd worn with my family. As the tropical sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the beach, I realized something profound had shifted. We weren't magically healed as a family. Years of dysfunctional patterns couldn't be erased in a day, but we had glimpsed the possibility of something different, something authentic. Raj appeared discreetly at the edge of our gathering. Ms. Rivera, I apologize for the interruption, but the Tokyo investors are on the line for your scheduled call. I checked my watch, surprised by how quickly time had passed. Thank you, Raj. I'll be right there. As I stood to leave, my father rose as well. Business calls, he said, but without the dismissive tone he might have used before. We understand. Dinner? I suggested. My villa at 7? Nothing formal, just family. The invitation hung in the air, not an obligation or expectation, but a genuine choice. My mother smiled warmly. We'd love that, wouldn't we? Nods of agreement. Circled the group, even from Marco and Vanessa. As I walked away to take my call, I felt lighter somehow. The burden of secrecy had been replaced by something else. Not perfect understanding, but at least the beginning of authentic connection. The path forward wouldn't be simple or straightforward. Old habits die hard, and new patterns take time to establish. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about my family's place in my life, not as judges or competitors or reluctant benefactors, but as fellow travelers, each with our own journey, our own definition of success. And that perhaps was the most valuable investment of all. My private villa transformed beautifully for the family dinner. The staff had arranged the expansive terrace with twinkling lights and tropical flowers, creating an atmosphere that was elegant yet comfortable. The ocean provided a rhythmic soundtrack as waves crashed against the cliffs below, and the setting sun painted the sky in spectacular hues of orange and purple. I surveyed the space, making final adjustments to ensure everything was perfect. This wasn't about impressing my family with wealth or status. They'd had enough of that shock already. Tonight was about creating a space where we could continue the fragile new connections that had begun to form earlier that day. The doorbell chimed at precisely 7. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door to find my entire family standing there, each holding something. My mother with a bouquet of local flowers, my father with a bottle of wine, Marco and Vanessa with a small wrapped package, even Diego with what appeared to be a handmade card. "We didn't want to come empty-handed," my mother explained, a touch of nervousness in her voice. "You didn't need to bring anything," I said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Yes, we did," my father replied softly. "It's what guests do when invited to someone's home, and we're finally seeing your real home, aren't we?" The simple acknowledgement brought an unexpected lump to my throat. "Come in," I managed, stepping aside to welcome them. Their reactions to the villa were gratifyingly authentic. Gasps of appreciation at the panoramic ocean views, murmurs of admiration for the thoughtfully designed space. There was none of the competitive evaluation I'd grown accustomed to, just genuine appreciation. "This is stunning, Sophia," Aunt Lydia said, running her hand along the locally sourced teak dining table. "Did you design it yourself?" "I worked with the original architect when I purchased it 2 years ago," I explained. "We kept the traditional Balinese elements but modernized the functionality." "It's perfect," my mother said, her eyes taking in every detail. "It suits you somehow. Elegant but not showy, thoughtful in all the right ways." Coming from her, this was significant. Her aesthetic judgments had always been cutting, particularly regarding my more minimalist preferences. "Thank you," I said simply, accepting the compliment for what it was, a small bridge being extended. We settled on the terrace where resort staff had prepared a traditional Indonesian feast: sauté skewers, nasi goreng, gado-gado salad, freshly caught fish and aromatic spices, and a variety of tropical fruits. "No fancy French cuisine?" Marco asked, but his tone was teasing rather than judgmental. "I prefer authentic local food," I replied. "One of the first things we do when acquiring a property is evaluate its culinary program, making sure it honors local traditions while meeting international standards." "Smart," he nodded thoughtfully. "Authenticity is increasingly valuable in luxury experiences." It was such a normal exchange, professional peers discussing industry trends rather than siblings locked in their usual power dynamic. The shift was subtle but profound. As we filled our plates and began to eat, the conversation flowed surprisingly easily. We shared stories of the day's activities, observations about the resort, plans for the remaining vacation days, neutral topics that allowed us to interact without the loaded subtext that typically characterized our family gatherings. Midway through the meal, my father cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology, Sophia." The table fell silent, all eyes turning to him. My father rarely apologized for anything. "When you left BlackRock to start your own venture, I was dismissive," he continued. "I believed there was only one path to success, the path I'd followed, the path Marco followed. I couldn't see the possibility of anything else." He swirled the wine in his glass, gathering his thoughts. "Today, listening to how you built Horizon from nothing, the vision, the persistence, the strategic thinking, I realized something. You're not successful despite forging your own path. You're successful because you forged your own path." The words hung in the air, weighty with significance. The Rivera drive and intelligence, applied in a completely different direction, he mused. "Perhaps the most Rivera thing you could have done was to reject our prescribed path entirely." "I never saw it that way," I admitted. "I wasn't rejecting the family legacy so much as creating something that was authentically mine." "And that's precisely what makes it remarkable," my father replied. "You didn't need our name, our connections, our approval. You built something substantial completely on your own terms." He raised his glass. "To forging your own path, and proving all of us wonderfully wrong." We clinked glasses, the simple gesture somehow healing years of unspoken tension. "I'm curious," Vanessa said, her tone genuinely interested rather than challenging. "What was the turning point for Horizon? When did you know it was going to succeed?" It was the first time she'd ever asked me a question about my work without an underlying agenda, and I found myself responding with equal authenticity. 3 years in, I replied. We'd acquired 4 smaller properties and successfully increased their value, but they were all relatively safe bets. Then an opportunity came up for a distressed resort in Santorini, significantly larger than anything we'd handled before, with serious structural and financial problems. I paused, remembering the sleepless nights, the second-guessing, the weight of responsibility for my team and investors. Everyone advised against it. The numbers were terrifying, the renovation costs astronomical. But I saw something in that property that others missed, not just its physical potential, but the emotional connection people had to its history. "You went with your gut," my mother observed. "Informed gut," I corrected with a smile. "We did exhaustive research, modeled every scenario. But ultimately, yes, I made the call that contradicted conventional wisdom." "And?" Diego prompted, clearly invested in the story. 18 months later, we'd transformed it into one of the most sought-after destinations in the Mediterranean. It's now our flagship property, valued at 8 times what we paid. That's when I knew Horizon wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. "That's incredible," Marco said, and for once, there wasn't a trace of competition in his voice, just genuine respect. "What about you?" I asked him. "Was there a moment when you knew you'd made the right choice with the firm?" He seemed surprised by the question, as if he'd never considered that his seemingly predestined path had also been a choice. After a moment's reflection, he shared a story about a pro bono case early in his career, one that had challenged him professionally and personally, ultimately affirming his commitment to law despite the pressures of the family firm. The pattern continued around the table, each family member sharing pivotal moments from their own journeys, both professional and personal. My mother spoke candidly about her struggles finding identity beyond being a supportive wife and mother. Diego revealed his passion for sustainable technology that underlay his scattered business ideas. Aunt Lydia described her quiet philanthropy work that none of us had known about. It was as if we were meeting each other for the first time, not as the roles we'd been assigned in the family narrative, but as complex individuals with our own dreams, fears, and defining moments. As the night progressed, Marco and Vanessa presented their small wrapped package. "We got this for you this afternoon," Vanessa explained, after our conversation. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound journal with my initials embossed on the cover. "We thought you might want to document the next chapter of Horizon's journey," Marco said, "and maybe some of these family moments too." The thoughtfulness of the gift, acknowledging both my professional identity and our evolving family dynamic, touched me deeply. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "I'll treasure it." Diego's handmade card turned out to be a surprisingly thoughtful note, acknowledging his history of financial impositions and a promise to approach our relationship differently moving forward. "Also," he added with characteristic enthusiasm, "I've started working on that real business plan you mentioned. No shortcuts." As the evening drew to a close, we found ourselves gathered at the edge of the terrace, looking out at the moonlight reflecting off the ocean. The conversation had turned philosophical, contemplating the nature of success and fulfillment. "I've been thinking," my father said quietly, "about what you said regarding authentic connections versus transactional relationships. It's made me reconsider many of my own approaches." "How so?" I asked. "I've always viewed relationships primarily through the lens of utility. What can this person do for me, for the firm, for the family? It's efficient, but perhaps I've missed something essential along the way." It was a startling admission from a man who had built his entire life around strategic alliances and calculated networking. "It's never too late to shift perspective," I offered. "I'm still learning that myself." He nodded thoughtfully. "The irony is that your approach, building genuine connections rather than leveraging family name, has proven remarkably successful. Perhaps there's wisdom there I've overlooked." "Different approaches for different journeys," I suggested. "Neither inherently superior, just different paths to different destinations." "Well, I for one am glad we're finally seeing your path clearly," my mother said, linking her arm through mine. "Even if it took a dramatic revelation to get us here." As my family departed later that night, the goodbye hugs felt different, less performative, more authentic. We'd crossed a threshold together, moving from the superficial connections of shared DNA to the beginnings of genuine understanding. The remaining days of the family vacation unfolded with a new rhythm. There were still moments of tension and old patterns occasionally reasserted themselves, but something fundamental had shifted. We were more honest with each other, more willing to see beyond our prescribed family roles. Marco and I had a lengthy discussion about the law firm's future, approaching it as equal professionals rather than as dominant older brother and deferential younger sister. I offered insights from my experience with corporate restructuring. He shared concerns about the changing legal landscape that he'd previously kept hidden behind a facade of unwavering confidence. My mother joined me for an early morning yoga session on my villa's terrace, afterwards confessing that she'd always struggled with the pressure to maintain the perfect Rivera family image. "I pushed that pressure onto you," she admitted. "Expected? You to fit a mold that I wasn't even comfortable with myself." Diego surprised everyone by presenting a genuinely thoughtful business proposal on our last day. Not the half-baked app idea he'd initially pitched, but a concept for sustainable tourism technology that showed real potential. I connected him with Horizon's innovation team for further development, not as a family favor, but because his idea genuinely merited consideration. Even Vanessa and I found common ground, spending an afternoon discussing design principles for the resort renovation. Her aesthetic sense was actually quite compatible with Horizon's vision, and I found myself appreciating her insights without the usual layer of competitive tension. On our final evening, the family gathered for a sunset cruise, the same activity that had marked the beginning of our vacation, but with a profoundly different dynamic. This time, there was no jockeying for status, no manipulation around expenses, no performative success stories designed to establish hierarchy. Instead, we simply enjoyed each other's company, celebrating the end of a vacation that had transformed far more than just our tans. As the catamaran glided through the gentle waves, my father joined me at the railing, looking out at the horizon where the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "I've been thinking about legacy," he said without preamble. "What it means to create something that lasts." "And," I prompted, "I've always believed legacy was about continuity, passing the same torch from one generation to the next, preserving what was built." He turned to look at me directly. "But watching you this week, I'm reconsidering. Perhaps true legacy isn't about continuation, but evolution. Not preserving the same path, but inspiring new ones." "That's a significant shift in perspective," I observed. He nodded. "The Rivera name will mean something different because of what you've built. Not an extension of our past, but a new branch entirely. There's beauty in that I hadn't appreciated before." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its final golden rays across the water, I felt a sense of completion that went beyond the successful acquisition of the Amara, or even the transformation in my family relationships. Something had shifted within me as well, a release of the need for validation, an embracing of my authentic path not in opposition to my family legacy, but as a unique expression of it. The morning of departure arrived with the bittersweet quality of endings that are also beginnings. As my family checked out of the resort, I found myself in the unusual position of both guest and owner, straddling the personal and professional aspects of the experience. Raj approached as I was saying goodbye to my parents in the lobby. "Ms. Rivera, the board has requested a brief call regarding the renovation timeline. They're quite eager to proceed with your vision for the property." My father overheard, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Ms. Rivera," he repeated. "I'm still getting used to that." "So am I sometimes," I admitted. "We're immensely proud of you," my mother said, and for once, the pride in her eyes was unconditional, not tied to her definition of success, but to recognition of my authentic achievement. Marco and Vanessa approached, luggage in tow. "So, when's the next family vacation?" Marco asked. "Now that we know our sister owns half the luxury resorts in the world." "Hardly half," I laughed. "But I might have some suggestions for Christmas." "Somewhere cold next time," Vanessa requested. "I'm thinking mountain chalet, roaring fires, hot chocolate." "I'll see what I can do," I promised, making a mental note to have my team research potential alpine acquisitions. Not because I needed to impress my family, but because I genuinely wanted to create another opportunity for connection. Diego was the last to join us, predictably running late. "Sophia," he called out, jogging across the lobby. "I almost forgot. I've been working on something." He thrust a folder into my hands. "The complete business plan, like you asked. Take your time looking it over." I accepted it with genuine interest. "I will, Diego, and I'll give you honest feedback, not just a family response." "That's exactly what I want," he said, surprising me with his sincerity. "No more handouts or fake encouragement. I want to earn it for real this time." As they departed for the airport shuttle, I found myself unexpectedly emotional. The family I was saying goodbye to was fundamentally different from the one that had arrived a week ago. Not perfect by any means, but more authentic, more willing to see each other as we truly were rather than as the roles we'd been assigned. I had a few hours before my own departure, time I'd allocated for a final review of the renovation plans with Raj and his team. As I walked through the property, I saw it with dual vision, the professional assessment of what could be improved, alongside personal memories of a week that had transformed far more than just a resort. James Whitaker found me by the main pool, his casual appearance suggesting he too was preparing to depart. "So," he said, dropping into the chair beside me, "how did the great family revelation play out in the end?" "Better than I expected," I admitted. "Not instant harmony, but genuine progress." "Impressive," he nodded. "Family dynamics are usually far more resistant to change." "The key was shifting from transactional to authentic," I explained. "Once we stopped keeping score and started actually seeing each other, everything changed." He considered this, thoughtfully. "Sounds like a principle that might apply beyond family relationships." "I'm beginning to think it applies to everything," I agreed. "Business, friendship, community. Authenticity creates possibilities that strategy alone never could." "The wisdom of Sophia Rivera," he teased gently. "Speaking of which, are we still on for that Maldives project discussion next month?" "Absolutely," I confirmed. "I've had my team reviewing the prospectus. There's potential there." "Excellent." He stood, extending his hand. "Until then. And congratulations again, not just on the Amara acquisition, but on the more challenging family navigation. Both require exceptional skill." After he departed, I found a quiet spot overlooking the ocean, the journal Marco and Vanessa had given me open on my lap. I began to write, not just about Horizon's next chapter or the family breakthrough, but about the deeper lessons of the past week. I wrote about the courage to define success on your own terms, even when those around you don't understand or approve. About building something authentic rather than performative, substance over appearance. About the freedom that comes from releasing the need for external validation. Most importantly, I wrote about the power of being seen for who you truly are. and the equal importance of truly seeing others beyond the roles and assumptions we assign them. My phone buzzed with a message from Elise. Tokyo investors confirmed for next week. Full funding secured for the Kyoto project. Congratulations, boss. Professional success continued to unfold alongside personal growth, not as separate realms, but as interconnected aspects of an authentic life. One informed the other, creating a wholeness I hadn't fully appreciated before. As my car arrived to take me to the airport, Raj appeared for a final goodbye. The staff wanted me to convey their excitement about working with you, Ms. Rivera. Your approach to hospitality aligns perfectly with the culture we've always aspired to create here. That's the highest compliment, I told him sincerely. A successful acquisition isn't just about property and profits, it's about people and purpose. Precisely, he agreed. Will you be returning soon to oversee the renovations? In about a month, I confirmed. And possibly with family for Christmas, if we can coordinate schedules. He smiled. We'll be ready either way. Safe travels, Ms. Rivera. As the car wound its way down the coastal road toward the airport, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. Not just the physical journey to Bali or the professional path that had led to acquiring the Amara, but the internal journey from seeking validation to embracing authenticity. I hadn't set out to teach my family a lesson or to prove my worth to them. I had simply followed my own vision, built something I believed in, and ultimately allowed the truth to emerge naturally. The transformation in our relationships wasn't the result of confrontation or vindication, but of finally seeing each other clearly. Imperfect, complex, and worthy of genuine connection. My phone buzzed with a group message from my mother. Home safe. Already missing paradise. More importantly, missing our real conversations. Let's not wait for another vacation to continue them. A cascade of affirmative replies followed. Marco suggesting a monthly family video call without the usual status updates. Diego promising to send progress reports on his business plan. My father proposing a family retreat at his cabin, where we can leave the Rivera name at the door and just be ourselves. I smiled, typing my own response. Count me in. No masks, no scorekeeping, no roles, just us. As the airport came into view, I felt a profound sense of alignment, professional achievement, and personal authenticity no longer in conflict, but in harmony. The secret I'd maintained hadn't been about deception, but about discovery. Finding my own definition of success without the weight of external expectations. The revelation at the resort hadn't been the end of a charade, but the beginning of something authentic, not just with my family, but within myself. I no longer needed to compartmentalize different aspects of my identity or hide my achievements to avoid disrupting established dynamics. I could simply be Sophia Rivera in all my complexity. If you've ever felt the pressure to diminish your light to make others comfortable, or struggled to define success on your own terms when the world wants to impose its definition, you understand this journey. If you've walked the tightrope between family expectations and personal truth, or built something meaningful while those closest to you underestimated your potential, you've traveled this path too. True success isn't measured in acquisitions, or assets, titles, or tributes. It's found in the courage to forge your own path, even when others can't yet see its value. It's in building something authentic rather than performative, substance over appearance. And perhaps most importantly, it's in creating connections based on genuine seeing and being seen, rather than roles and expectations. So if you're standing at a crossroads between others' expectations and your own vision, or if you're already walking a path that few understand, remember this. Your worth isn't determined by others' perception of your journey. The most powerful validation comes not from proving critics wrong, but from proving your own belief in yourself right. Don't wait for others to recognize your value before you fully claim it yourself. Build quietly if you must, but build authentically. The right people will eventually see what you've created, and more importantly, they'll see you, the real you, behind it all. Success isn't about who pays for what at a family vacation. It's about creating a life that reflects your true values, strengths, and vision, whether others recognize it immediately or not. And sometimes, the greatest achievement isn't the empire you build, but the authenticity you maintain while building it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.